I cut Dave's training volume by 60%, and he grew a ½ inch in 6 weeks. So before working together, this guy was training twice a day, 45 minutes per session, 7 days a week, no breaks, using 15 pounds in an extender. He had completely stalled and had been so for months at that point. I cut his workload by more than half. 6 weeks later, measurable progress. Let's talk about why. So this isn't a you weren't trying hard enough story. This isn't a you weren't doing the work story. This isn't a you weren't putting in the time story. This was a disciplined, consistent adult doing everything the internet told him to do that guaranteed his success. More time, more sessions, more tension, progressive overload. And he went absolutely nowhere because of it. Now, don't get me wrong, we talked about it, and he did experience some newbie gains very early on before he worked with me. So the fact isn't that doing all of that got him absolutely nowhere. It's just that it got him somewhere that he couldn't work himself out of. My question to him and to you is, at 45 minutes per day, twice a day, 7 days a week, no breaks, where do you think you go from there? How do you think that kind of story unfolds over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? So training twice a day for 45 minutes per day at 15 pounds, that's not a motivation issue. That is a dosage and frequency issue. So the first thing that we did when we started working together wasn't add things. We cut things aggressively. The cuts were not emotional, not random, but a strategic analysis of what he had been doing that we could prove for a fact weren't causing him to grow. So the first thing that we did is we took 2 weeks basically completely off. Most of the time, my recommendation to clients looks something like 5 pounds for 20 or 30 minutes in an extender or hanging, 5 to 7 inches of mercury in a vacuum erection device for 20 minutes or less, and then doing the recovery pumping that I talk about on this channel morning and night of off days, and typically morning of on training days. What this does is a couple of things. It allows our tissues to sort of start working themselves back to a baseline where they're not trying to constantly outpace tons of input stressors that they need to recover from. Second thing is it forms a baseline from which we can gather really good strategic data. So after a 2-week break and then 6 weeks on the new starting load, pre-workout measurements improved linearly. Post-workout peaks improved. He was consistently hitting numbers that he hadn't seen before. We were crunching all of his training data into weekly averages, and consistently over time, they were going up in a straight line. That's how adaptation actually looks. So here's the part that most people don't understand, and I've made it the point of this entire channel. More stress doesn't equal more adaptation. At a certain point, more stress equals protection. Tissue under constant high tension resists deformation. Listen to me, this is very important. Tissue under constant high stress adapts by resisting deformation, not by remodeling longer. You don't grow because you worked hard. You grow because you recovered from the correct amount of stress. It's this simple. If the dose is too high, the body shifts into survival mode. Protective mechanisms take over, and you begin strengthening, not lengthening. So that this isn't just PE. I see this pattern all the time. In strength training, in dieting, in business, people stall so they add more effort, more hours, more intensity, and they just dig the hole deeper. Here is a basic rule of cellular biology. Adaptation happens in the space in between sessions. If you never allow that space sufficiently, you never get the adaptations. Effort is not the same thing as efficiency. Dose determines direction. So I'm not anti-hard work, I'm anti-waste. If you're doing more than twice the necessary volume to grow, that doesn't make you twice as disciplined. It more than likely makes you overtrained and under-recovered. So here's the takeaway. If you're stalled, and your solution thus far has been to add more time, more tension, more load, ask yourself these questions. What would happen if you removed 30 to 60% of your current volume and executed the remaining work better? You might not need a new method. You might not need a new technique. You might not need a new routine. You might not need a new toy. You might need a more refined dose. So this is one case study, but the pattern is very clear. I'd say this happens in about 60% of the people that come to me personally for training advice. My advice, more isn't better. Better is better. Guys, thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate it. Please click subscribe down below. And as always, please visit massivenovelties.com for all your mail enhancement needs.